Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to call the Executive Committee Tuesday, April 24th to order. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Tripp?
Present.
Mr. Washington?
Present.
Mr. Legess? Mr. Vickery? Mr. Olchoff? Mr. Hess? Mr. McConnell? Mr. Scott? Mr. Snipes? Mr. Byrne?
Present.
Mr. Seroy?
Present.
Ms. Weber? Mr. Lear?
Present.
Mr. Wheeler?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Any public comment today? Don't see any. The minutes are not ready, as I was just informed. Somebody took a vacation, so. No. Under legislative, Steve, do you have anything for us today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The UCCI didn't have a meeting this month for membership, and so there wasn't anything that came up. The only legislation they're following closely deals with some of the smaller counties and some of their accounting procedures. It's not something that directly affects us, so
Okay.
there is no major legislation that UCCI is reporting.
Okay. Thank you. Just as a kind of an FYI, something came up between last month and this month on the legislative side. It had to do with how the competing bills in the Senate/House on solar assessments was moving along, and I had received some information because it's very fast moving. Once it's in there, it's, you know, you have bills, counter bills, proposals, meetings that happen, things shift. There was an opportunity that a shell bill would have been filled, if you will, on the Senate side with some of the solar language that was unacceptable to the Assessors Association. Had to do with this thing called freehold leasehold, which basically would have been the portion of the unpaid taxes for the farm properties would have been, if the solar companies did not pay, then it couldn't go to tax sale. And which is unprecedented in the state of Illinois, the way the statutes and all of the Department of Commerce rules work. So I was asked to send a letter to our senator on behalf of, I spoke for me and not the board at that point because I didn't have your authority, but I want to tell you that I sent that letter asking for the help to make sure that it was fair to Kankakee County and not to take an unprecedented action as far as in terms of giving complete authority to a business to do something that would affect the farm owner at that time, because really that was outside of any agreement that the solar farms and the farmer would have. So just to let you know that I did that. It wasn't, you know, I couldn't speak on behalf of the board. It was on behalf of myself. So moving on. Thank you, Steve, by the way. Information services, Kevin, do you have anything today? You're talking to the mic there.
At least somebody noticed that I put in there. Upgrade on the computer refresh. We're now in the circuit clerk's office. That's the largest one that we specifically deal with. We slow down when we hit that office because they have so many mission critical divisions that they work there, so we have to do a little bit at a time. So we put out about 7 to 10 test ones to make sure, and we pick who they are. We start off with the department head and Deb, and then critical people, and we see how they run for a while. So that somewhat slows us down when you do the refresh, but we really can't have the court system slowed up for any reason. It's going well. Of the ones we have out, only one's having a problem, and that seems to be unique to that person because they all basically in this division do the same thing. So we're working together with their vendor CourtView. We know how to resolve it, and we can resolve it relatively quick. But if you got 60-something people, we don't want 60-something calls every other day going to do there. So we'd rather see if the vendor can have it fixed, or it's not really broke, but preventative. So before we go any further with that, and they believe they can do something, potentially there's going to be a patch. But other than that, the other people that are doing aren't experiencing the same problem. It's more of a time concern with both Sandy and I. if I have to send Jason every few minutes and it's a 20-minute workaround, there's not enough hours in the day to do that. But it's what we have to do is easy to do. But other than that, it's going well. It's just a unique issue in there. Once we get through that, we'll probably come back to this building a little bit. Once again, we have 1.5, 2 years to get it done. That's why we start so early, is both to save money and to have time to work these problems out and not cause problems when we do the refresh. Okay, the next issue is dealing with the boardroom and the committee. Do you want me to go into what we discussed?
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask you to.
Okay.
Please.
The chairman has put in a request that I work out an emergency, well, I think we believe it's an emergency issue. It's actually your call how we do it. Process for those of you board members who, if I'm gonna make sure I say it right, correct me if I go down the wrong road. In case there's an emergency vote that one of you need to do, but you can't make it in, I'm working on a process at the request of the chairman to allow for that to happen. I'm stressing that it's emergency only. Cannot be done out of convenience. You can't say, I want to go on a vacation. Can I set that up? Because you're probably getting the legalities that nobody needs to address at that point. So I believe I've found a couple options that'll work. Some of them are more simple than the other one. I've already begun to discuss with a couple of board members, or at least one. And I think the chairman's discussed with a couple of board members about testing this. I know that they would work. I'm more concerned than making sure that if we do it this way, that we can make sure the public can verify that the person we say is voting, so you don't get into questions. Well, how do we know that person did that? Basically, the way I'm looking at it is I'm thinking potentially having this computer or another one do a video conference. And then I would set that up with whoever has to do it, where from their computer at home, that they call into here. I would display them on, you'd be able to see them and you'd be able to hear them. So when it's time to call for the vote, you could see them actually make the vote. So there should be no question that that person is doing that. That's the most sophisticated. The simpler one is I would also like to request that you consider adding the phone back into this room. It used to be here for years. Through my belief, through an accident when the phone systems were converted over to digital, lines were just stopped. Well, this one was almost never used in case it was unless it was something specific, so nobody really saw the traffic on it, so it got shut down, pulled the phone out. Well, we probably should have it, or at least you should consider having it. If you did no more than, this wouldn't be a direct line into it, you'd mostly be able to call out. What it was used for predominantly when I was here, and a lot of you probably remember, if somebody forgot something, like say, you would call up the 5th floor and say, bring this down, and you called to assessor, can you bring that on here? So a quick thing, so the meeting could keep going on. Well, we also could use that for, if had to be, if something else didn't work, we call and verify that person's, at least his voice, and say they could vote. But there's just so many convenience things that you could have by having the phone here that you should at least consider that, because it's the jack sitting right there. It's just reactivating it, put it in digital. If had be, I'm not paying for the line. I'd pay for the headset for the unit to come in. So it wouldn't, the cost would be nominal to do something like that, but it would give you the flexibility to do.
Mr. Olta?
Thank you, Chairman. With what you're talking about with the computer, would that be Skype?
I was going to look at Skype. There's a couple other ones. What I'm looking at is Google Hangout, but more likely I'm looking at either Zoom or WebEx. The reason that I'm looking for the other two is I know we've tested Google Hangout and I can make it work. Skype requires a little bit on the other end for the individual on the other end to know a little bit more. And I want to make it as painless and almost...
I just used Skype on a board meeting to Florida yesterday, and it was simple.
It is one of the options. There are some simpler than that.
Free.
But here's what the reason I'm looking at either Zoom or WebEx is if you get 3 people there or 2 people there, the person here chairing can't stop their mic. We need to be able to have the same control of who's speaking or whatever as you can stop all of them. You can stop, well, that's not the flexibility that you need to do. So I'm thinking we go that next step that you just click a button.
Right.
Does that sound?
Well, it does, and I can see the pain on Mr. Oltoff's face because he doesn't want his mic turned off. But
Same to you, fella.
no, but I do. I've used Zoom, and it's actually a preferred business method. So I would, especially, I know of one company that has no central offices, and everybody works from home. Thousands of employees, and they use Zoom. So I could say that
Well, that's
without
good.
knowing WebEx, I think Zoom is pretty much the top of the line, and it's pretty cheap. It's not, it's all dependent on users, and so.
I actually was going to go to WebEx, and then I saw Zoom that it's in the business community. It's the recommended platform. So I'm glad that you have experience. I've already looked through. I know how to set it up. That none of them will be any problem. But we would send out the invite. They'll click on it. You download something, and it'll be as easy. Actually, it'll be easier even than Skype is. The one benefit with a Skype is if you have a Windows 10 or Windows 7, actually it's forced down on you, so you kind of have it, but nobody sets it up. This you won't have to set up. We'll control it. You have the server. You just click on something that works. So,
Okay.
so
ETA, what are you thinking?
well, as long as everybody's okay, I'll start the process probably today or tomorrow.
Okay.
We've done testing on the other ones. I can probably have it at least tested by the end of the week, and at least by the one board member that we talked about, Tinker. She already gave me permission that she'd be like to be a test, and maybe I should go into other unit I was talking about too. Is preferred if you already have a setup at home, we'd hook into you. If you don't, at the request of the chairman, I'm repurposing a laptop that we have that can be for emergency only. It's not everybody doesn't get a laptop for this. But if we know this is going to happen, you can't have it. We can have it pre-configured that we send it over to you. My guy will come stop in your house, and then we'll test the thing, and we'll call into you before the meeting, and we know this connection will work. So it's 28 board members are not getting laptops. This is just purely for the emergency section. Sure. Is that something?
Yeah, because we were talking about Dr. Polk's situation, and we wanted to see, as long as she's having some issues getting here, that we wanted to try to support that. Like you said, I don't think it's fair to have that be a 2 or 3 or 4 year situation, because that's just we make the commitment to get here, and and I don't think it's for vacations. If you decide you want to go on vacation and you get to vote from vacation, I don't know if that's a good situation either. But there are times when things happen, knee surgeries, somebody has a health event that they still want to be part of something that's substantial, that kind of thing. So.
And you would not call me. This would have to go through the chairman's office. We would just facilitate it. We don't dictate who gets it.
Yep. So on the technology side, we're trying to get it, hopefully for this next full board, is when we'd like to have something. It'd be better to test it on a committee, but we might have to go live with it the first time. So that's probably the best time to do it. So I had one other thing, but is there any more questions about the technology and what Kevin's talking about there? Mr. Snipes?
No, my question, and I think you kind of answered this, was, when we have a board member that has health issues or whatever, still want to be a part of the meeting, like Dr. Polk, that we can have something that's in place to kind of assist those individuals, what I call our own board ADA compliance. So thanks for taking it into the right direction.
One of the reasons that we need to potentially provide the unit, and it's the county's property and it comes back when you're not doing this, is if you have your individual computers, I don't have the manpower, and I don't know that it's legal that I send county employees to go fix your computers. Right. That's open up a whole can of worms that nobody thinks of any, but then you'll start getting protests about. What are you doing? How come you get to get this and nobody else gets to it? Right. Even though you're performing the taxpayers' job.
The just as a tag on to that, it's somewhat related to it. I was on the phone with Comcast yesterday, asking about public access television, because I thought it was time to at least find out what was capable. And I haven't talked to Kevin about this, and I hope I don't put you on the spot. I won't ask technology questions without you being able to answer at this point. But what I was looking to do is to see how could we broadcast on Channel 4 where that's not covered by a municipality. Because, Kankakee, I think Bradley has their own agreement. Bourbonnais has their own agreement, I believe. But a lot of the outlying areas that have Comcast, that Channel 4 is either dormant or with other types of content. How can we use that as a county to get information that out to those residents? So I think St. Anne would be part of it. Moments, I think, has a different cable system, but Manteno has their own agreement. But then I could also approach those municipalities and saying, hey, do you mind if we broadcast the county board meetings, on your Channel 4? I don't see how they would not want that, but they may not. I can't say that, but that was the thought, was that we can get other information out. Where do people go for, like the assessor question, how do they appeal their assessments, those types of things. It's good information for wherever you live in the county. So just kind of as a heads up, I'll bring that back, but it was a thought, and I don't know where Comcast goes all over the county, where all their cable goes. It may go all the way out to Limestone. I think it does. Probably doesn't. I think it goes out towards Sun River. I think they have Comcast out there. I think they have city water too, but I believe it goes out there. St. Anne? Yep. Comcast out there? Okay. Herscher? Okay. So it's a good avenue, I think. And everybody's can get online on their phone, and most people have that, but I thought, why not see if we can get it into the homes as well. So
One thing I'd like to add is when we do the meetings, we stream it to through YouTube, and they keep a copy of there. We have the original here, so I know at least we can provide the file that if they can play it later. Right. If we get to broadcast technology, I have no clue of how to do that. So I'm letting you know we've now left computer world, and I don't want to promise you I know anything whatsoever at that point.
they said they got a guy. So
Thank you.
he's in
Then I'm
Home-
good.
They got a guy.
Terrible.
He's in Homewood. It's the cable guy. If you've seen the movie. So yeah, he's apparently they're in Homewood, and they could, as long as we have access to the main data wire, which is it does run right through here.
Okay.
Then we can get to where it's got to go. But we're just getting from there to the main, the backbone, if you will.
We have we use AT&T, just as you guys don't care, fiber, high-speed fiber, but I always have a Comcast backup one in case things go down, and make sure we can't serve web stuff over that, but I need to make sure all of the people working can actually go access their accounts if they're, so I do, and that's through the home.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if that helps,
Right.
I just don't understand. We're not actually doing TV technology. That I have no clue of how to do. We're using computer networking right now.
Yet. No, I just want to let you know that's where I'm going. We'll bring it back here and make sure everybody approves and all of that. But I had to get the ball rolling, and I had the opportunity yesterday. So, anything else?
That's it.
All right, thank you.
Oh, wait. Are you going to consider the phone, or would you rather not have the phone back up here?
Bat phone. Yeah. Is there? I guess. I don't know if that needs a motion. Just that's like a head nod. Does
No,
everybody?
yeah, I didn't need a motion.
Yeah, I got a head nod. Ralph.
It would be on your call group on the 5th floor.
Sorry.
We would be putting it on your call group on the 5th floor
Okay.
because it's going to be almost 100% used by your department, and HR training could use it down. They used to use it down here.
Okay. We'll get into the details, but I think it's a good thing. We should
Okay.
get it back.
All
Okay.
right.
Mr. Washington, did you have something?
You mentioned Sun River Terrace is on city water. It's got its own well, but it's managed by Aqua.
Oh, it is. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Moving on. Health Department. John Beavis, do you have anything? Oh, yes, he does have some today.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'll give my report, and then as I was driving over here, I just, from time to time, I'm not sure what exactly you would want to hear from the health department side of the fence. It's not my plan to, bring to you the day-to-day operations that we would normally go through, but just the foodborne illness investigation. And apparently I created a stir when I first sent this over and listed it as an FBI investigation. Apparently those can be two different things, to me anyway. So we got that clarified. I'm talking about a foodborne illness investigation. But some of that stuff's kind of interesting to let you know what's going on in relation to those events. And then a couple of other items that I have on here to discuss. Shouldn't take very long. Typically with our foodborne outbreaks that I've been familiar with, I've worked at the county almost 31 years. Traditionally, you have a facility, a restaurant, for example, that an outbreak occurs. You'll have anywhere from a few individuals to as many as I believe we've had approximately 150 individuals that became sick, 70 confirmed salmonella. But you're dealing with one facility and then, a certain menu of foods that you're looking at. This one was interesting in that we had a facility that was not, it was a bar that hosted a drinking party that what they did was they sold tickets for it. And so you had a group of individuals coming specifically for this one event that was going to have some alcohol and then food provided. Now the bar itself was not a licensed kitchen, so they're licensed to serve the alcohol and have a very small limited food menu item in relation to the equipment that they would be required to have from the health department. So what they did was then they catered food in from a separate facility that is licensed to cater within our county. So now we have a second site, but the whiskey or the alcohol that they were serving came from out of state, was a third party out of state who then contracted with a bartender from a fourth location. So we were dealing with 4 different scenarios here in relation to trying to figure out what happened. And so we had approximately, I think 50 people were at this party who had purchased the tickets. About half of them became ill. So through the investigation, we were trying to determine were there any food items, that could have been local. We did have some individuals who were the bartender that was contracted out. We feel was possibly our individual here because some of the drinks were made with raw eggs that were then poured into some of the drinks. And it's possible then that cross-contamination had occurred that way. We don't know for sure. The outbreak is over. It was within this past month. I believe I've already updated the Board of Health, when it had just happened at our last meeting, and I'm just now making it to this meeting. Just for informational purposes, I do want to commend our environmental health staff because they had 2 facilities that they were having to investigate and try to work with the management there. Definitely then when we're looking for additional cases to start popping up so that the food that was catered from the one location that was brought to the bar, for example, then there was food served at that restaurant that night also. And so we were looking if it were determined that food was contaminated, then we might expect or would expect to see additional cases popping up then at the facility. And that didn't happen. So it appeared that it was all isolated here. And then anyone else who went to the bar that night who wasn't part of this particular party didn't get ill. So it was confined just to this party, which is why we feel potentially that the bartender or the drink aspect of it was probably where this cross-contamination occurred. All the traditional tests came back negative for anything like Salmonella, Shigella, Clostridium, or anything like that. But there were two cases of norovirus. That's the one you'll traditionally hear, like on cruise ships. You'll have just hundreds of people, if not the whole ship, goes down with just this rapid sickness that goes. And usually it ends up being with norovirus is a fecal contamination. So somebody's hands weren't clean or a food product was contaminated with the fecal material. It then gets served or put on your plate or your glass. And in this kind of a party setting, people were sharing some of the drinks. Taste this, taste my raw egg. and so we feel that that's how that happened. So it was very unique in that regards. And again, just commending the environmental health staff and the CD staff, because they had to not only investigate the one situation, but the second site, and then deal with organizations and agencies outside of the county, and in this case, outside of the state, in trying to piece this together. And sometimes, ultimately, we just don't know for sure what happened. Any questions on that?
I hope not.
No. No, it doesn't appear that there were no, yeah, a lot of times we keep our fingers crossed and we don't get any additional, which we didn't in this case, which was good. And then we did have a number of new staff, both in environmental and in the communicable disease section, that they were able to get, their first taste of an outbreak investigation.
Did you have something, Mr. Bickford?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was this a licensed place? Was this place licensed?
Which one?
The one where the occasion, where the event took place?
Yes.
Was at a bar?
The two locations within Kankakee County are licensed facilities. What I was saying for the bar was that it's licensed as a low risk. It doesn't have a full kitchen, so it can't do a full menu like a restaurant can. So that's why the food was catered from another location, again, licensed with the health department. So we were able to work with both, facilities in relation to, what was being served, who was being served.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Washington? Yes, sir.
This is aside from that incident. Has there been any reported incidents of the romaine lettuce outbreak?
No, they're not locally. We're aware of that situation. We're monitoring it. We get information from the state. We've not been directed to do anything specifically in relation to that. We have tested the notification that when there are recalls or alerts like that, typically it isn't the health department necessarily that has to do it. We'll do it as a courtesy anyway, most of the time, but traditionally that news will filter down from the top to these facilities, so the grocery stores are aware of it from their management, and they'll pull those food items out of there, long before we ever even come in to say, hey, did you pull your items, or that we would recommend that you pull your items. So
Thank you.
All right.
the second situation is, I think now this is going on 3 weeks ago, and some of you may have seen this in the news. It's still on ongoing investigation. Again, not much involvement really from what we're doing in terms of investigating, but 3 weeks ago on a Sunday, I know, it was about noon, I just got home from church and I received a phone call from the Illinois Department of Public Health that they were investigating an outbreak of synthetic cannabinoids illnesses. Another word for synthetic cannabinoids would be fake pot. Apparently there's this bad batch that's been made. Somebody appears to have put in as an ingredient rat poison, and so individuals who were consuming this material were suffering the internal bleeding. And to date, there's approximately 150 individuals who have become ill, reported to the hospitals with the internal bleeding, or out the eyes or the nose or something like that. It's pretty severe. And unfortunately, then there have been 3 deaths to date. So it's a very important investigation that's going on. I've not heard any news lately in regards to whether they found where the source originated or anything like that. And there's a couple of locations in central Illinois and in northern Illinois and a little bit to the northwest where most of the individuals seem to have become ill at. The reason I was contacted was because there were 2 individuals from Kankakee County that were part of this outbreak now, and that's what they were letting me know. But through the investigation, it's been determined so far the material didn't originate from Kankakee County. These people didn't consume the material in Kankakee County. They had gone out of the area. They just happened to reside in Kankakee County, and so we were being notified. So when we get information now and throughout the state, when they notify everyone who's cooperating with the investigation. Kankakee County is listed on there now just because of the fact that those two individuals. Again, we've not been asked to do anything. We've made the Sheriff's Department aware of it, and at this point, it's just an informational thing, but it is still an ongoing outbreak. I think they still are having individuals with this material. I don't even know how much is out there of it, but there still seems to be a little bit that is reaching the customers because there are still new cases almost every day. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. They haven't tracked down the source yet?
Not that I'm aware of.
Wow.
A number of the individuals are, for lack of a better word, refusing to cooperate. They don't want to give up their sources, things like that.
Almost kills you, but you don't want to give up your source.
We did go, we had a number of our staff who took this information and went to all the vaping shops within the Kankakee County to just put information. They were very receptive to, appreciative of us coming to them. Some of them weren't aware of it. They gladly put up the information about, please be aware this outbreak's going on, don't consume this stuff, that type of thing. My understanding is in some cases, some of this synthetic cannabinoids is marketed and sold as like potpourri, so you can buy it and it's designed, you're supposed to cook it with water or something like that and create the aroma. But what's happening is then people are smoking it. And when it's mixed with, you don't know what, and apparently in this case, some rat poison is added to it, you're taking your chances. So I know last year I was talking about that soul virus with the people who have rats as pets. So I try not to do these talks before lunch. That's what my friends tell me. Don't do these talks before lunch. The third thing is just, and I noticed that there is a typo here. The opioid forum is May 8th, not May 7th. So it's a Tuesday, May 8th. At 7 p.m. at Olivet Nazarene College, ONU, at the Kresge Auditorium, I believe. So you just encourage you, if you haven't been to any of the other ones, try to make it to this one. It's going to be very informational, and part of the opioid grant as we finish up this first year and begin our second year with it. We have received notification that we're going to begin work on proposing our grant proposal for the second year. That's all I had, unless there's any other questions.
Thank you, Chairman. John, this is with Tim Ryan and the police officer, right?
Correct. And my understanding, Tim Ryan came the last time and was the main speaker. Tim Ryan is coming again, but he's sort of the secondary speaker. It's more from the policeman, and I'm sorry, I can't remember his name.
I can't remember.
I think it's like Wiskoski or something like that. But it's going to be more from his perspective, and it's to help parents understand with cell phones and some of the other technology that's out there on the computer, what kids are using for apps and things like that on their phones, and things that look innocent on the phone as a parent's looking at their child's phone, for example, but really they're hiding the deep dark secrets of the underworld of illegal drug use. So it's going to be very educational. So I'm looking forward to that. And if you can make it, I know the last one at KCC had over 200, maybe 250 individuals. That's why we've moved this to Kresge now. It seems to be growing. There's a lot of education that's being provided now within the community. So I'm excited about that.
Okay, Mr. Snipes?
2 questions. So the date is Tuesday, May 8th.
Correct.
At what time?
7 p.m.
Okay, and that's out of that. Okay, and then just a question. I know we had the epidemic, I believe, last year with that West Nile virus. Any status updates, possibility that is still in our particular area, or any antidotes to offset it?
The easy answer to that is yes. Every year, the health department, the environmental health division has a vector program. So we go out and once the weather starts ramping up and it's about to get ready, once spring really hits, and then we start getting the spring rains and the temperatures warm up, then we will start to see the mosquito activity increase. And so we have mosquito collection equipment that we go out to various locations within the county every year and test for the West Nile virus. The easy answer is it's here. It's been here. And every year there's an opportunity for somebody, unfortunately, to, you know, be bitten and potentially have the risks of getting West Nile virus. Now, most of the time an individual can get it and not even know they had it. It's kind of like the flu. You just feel bad for a couple of days, you get better and you're fine, and you've never been to the doctor, so you don't even know you had it. It's like most illnesses, it's very dangerous for individuals who are younger, older, or already their immune systems are compromised. So they're undergoing treatment for something else. And that's what happened last year with the individual who was already sick, got West Nile virus, and then that just overloaded the body, and he passed away. So we've had positive West Nile virus mosquitoes or birds every year. We don't always get humans, and last year was a bad year for us. So hopefully this year it won't be, but we'll start putting the education out there. You know, we'll put press releases out there. We've got Facebook now. The social media is great, and we'll start putting that information. We try to focus on the areas where there's large populations or a lot of you know, sporting events, like for softball, baseball fields and things like that, where a lot of evening activities where you're going to have hundreds of people that are not going to not play their softball or their sports or their soccer. But if there's wet areas around there where you could have the stagnant water, then that's what we'll be looking for. Usually with West Nile virus, you don't see that till later in the summer with the really hot temperatures and dry conditions. If we're getting a lot of persistent rains early on in the spring and fluctuations with temperatures 60s, 70s, and 80s, those mosquitoes are what we call the nuisance mosquitoes. They do not transmit the West Nile virus. They're just, you know, they carry away small pets and things like that. So, because they're really big, and they're just, that's why they're called nuisance mosquitoes. That's what you see around the river a lot. But when we get into a really hot, maybe a drought year, stagnant water that's been sitting for long periods of time, not any activity with splashing or anything like that, that's what the West Nile virus mosquito likes.
Okay.
So we'll put that information out there. But yes, it's always going to be present. It's been here for, you know, 15 years.
Right. Okay, so I know we had 2 cases. One was positive, and then, I mean, not positive, but they was able to get through it.
Right. 2 human cases,
right.
one passed away and 1 survived.
But if there's any antidote for early, have some type of antidote to offset it. If you
we just encourage, you know, long sleeves, you know, mosquito repellent when you're out and about, either in the early mornings or the evenings, you know, when mosquito activity is high. Now, right now, we don't really have any mosquito activity. It's too cool. But you get 2 weeks of, it takes about 2 weeks for the eggs to hatch once the conditions are prime. And, you know, next week we start hitting 70s. And if it stays that way for a period of time, they're, you know, I know as soon as I hit the golf course, they're going to start showing up.
No, okay.
So you can blame me.
So to John's point, he was asking about what this committee wants to hear on a regular basis. Is it this type of information, stuff you can take back to your constituents? Is it abbreviated versions of such? Is it more expanded? Is it, you know, the business of the office, how, you know, if there's any needs, the things that the county board would want to know about? I mean, I'm trying to further, he asked the question. I didn't know if there's,
right.
Are we missing anything, or we're getting too much? You tell me, Mr. Byrd.
This is all, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is all valuable information to share with the constituents and share on social media, and it comes up and we have answers if people call us. So it's very valuable, the public service and announcements and all that.
I think it's interesting, obviously, and these are the things that we're starting to see on social media. You know, whether we want to talk about it or not, the public is, and you know, an outbreak. You know, somebody may have been talking to you about, you know, it, and I'm not here to call out the names of the facilities per se, or even the names of the individuals. I can't do that, but just it's more of the focus of, here's an odd event, or just, or if, a new grant that we got that's different from what we typically have done, or some sort of an event that we're going to have that we can at least invite you to, or make you aware of, or pass on to your friends and neighbors.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Snipes?
Another opportunity, I know the health department handles it, but if there's some information on, like, from time to time, the number of STDs and the whole 9 yards. I know you do have it out there or wherever, but it's also, when we're doing the live broadcasts, to let the younger generation know that it's still alive and well. I know y'all have them in, breaking down where schools and all that kind of stuff, but whatever it is that, I mean, our position is to kind of get that information from you and then kind of share it with them. But since they sometimes look at these podcasts, my thing is to share that information kind of as well, or any type of health update that kind of deals with the general overall health of the county. But I believe in that area, it does spark the interest when they do hear it.
I know, and we're in the process. I'll go back and talk to Chris, my administrative assistant, and find out where we're at in that process. But we're putting together the numbers for the annual report from last year, and it would have, that's definitely, numbers that are in there.
Yeah, thanks.
Now, is that information parsed out on your website to where if a board member wanted to go look at that and create their own social media post?
Yes.
Just to advise their constituents?
I think it's published now. What you'd have to create your own, obviously glean whatever numbers may be out of whatever it is that you're looking at if you wanted to post something.
So we could share the link to the document?
Yes.
Okay, just very easily. Mr. Vickery?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'd rather hear about it here than on the street or in social media. Your report, the status of things, and it kind of justifies our existence. I mean, right.
I'm still new to this. I'm not sure what, Bonnie had presented in the past per se, and I agree with you. I don't like being ambushed. So.
Mr. Trent?
I think what you're doing is a good balance. Good balance.
Okay.
Do what you're doing.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
I did have one quick question. What's the process if somebody wants their well water tested?
Typically, they can they would need to come into the health department, but you can start with a phone call. But if you come into the health department, we have kits that are available, and we take down the information, just your name, your address, and a phone number. It's going to be for bacteria or nitrates. If you want it tested for something more specific, we might be able to get you that kit, but then you're going to be paying the laboratory for, a fee for, say, if it's gasoline components or something like that. But the nitrates and the bacteria typically is what we recommend first to determine, anything that might be happening on site before we start blaming a neighbor or another site. We'll get those. You would take the sample. We don't take it for you. And then you would mail it. We give you the instructions and a mailing label. Within a week, we have the results back from the state. If they're positive, meaning there's contamination of either the bacteria or the nitrates, we'll contact you by phone right away so that you're not drinking it for another couple of days, waiting for the hard copy to show up in the mail. And then we'll work with you on chlorination information in relation to then, getting the well chlorinated and then resampled a second time. So,
okay.
And there's a small fee. We have to charge a small fee now because we get charged from the state no longer does the service for free. So I think it's approximately $20 for the bacteria and $30 for the nitrate. If you go to any other lab, though, the cost is going to be that much or more. We're not trying to make any money off of it. We're charging what the minimum is. If we do have to facilitate, maybe somebody doesn't have an automobile or difficulty in taking the sample, we can do that on a case-by-case basis for the homeowner, and that might help off. The cost helps offset any mileage then.
Okay. That's all I had. Anything else from the group? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to schools, no report from Dr. Murphy. I could tell just this committee that they had very expensive boiler go out. So we've had a boiler on order. It should be getting installed this week or early next out at the schools building. So that we told finance about that it was happening. It's just one of those things when you get a building and you buy a building, you bought the roof, you bought the boiler, you bought everything else with it. Unfortunately that happened, but we're replacing it with an energy efficient boiler that should last longer than any of us around on this board. So, oh, George will be here, obviously. Yeah, that's a given. But no, that's I just as a mention about the schools building. That is more building and grounds related, but Mr. McConnell did a lot of work on that, getting bids for it. Now Karen is here, so from the veterans, the VAC, I like to use abbreviations. There's a monthly report, a motion to approve the monthly report. Mr. Legesse, Mr. Byrne, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Good morning.
Morning.
I just have a couple things I want to add from the report. We do have a superintendent hired. He starts May 1st. His name is Derek Torres. He comes to us from Catholic Charities. He's been working with their veterans grant funding. It's the SSVF, Supportive Services for Veterans and Families Homeless Program, for about 2 years out of Will County. And he's been in our office before helping us with some of our vets and things too. We have a different caseworker on a normal basis, but he's still in the National Guard. So he will be starting on May 1st. So hopefully he'll be here next month. And then we also have a Vets Court graduation scheduled at this point for May 24th. It's courtroom 110 usually, and 11:30 in the morning. It's a Thursday morning, so if anybody would like to come, we always love having everybody join us for those. It's a great celebration. So, and that's all I really had to add to the report. Anybody got any questions? Awesome.
Yep.
Good. Thank you.
Quick. In case I worked through this with Karen the other day, in case anyone was wondering, the levies were set recently. You know, we bring that back to you obviously, but we had some questions about how that worked for the VAC because it's a separate levy within the county. So we actually went up by 25,000 per the commitment that we had previously, from 175 up to 201. It might be around 200 after all the dust settles on the levy request. And so just want to let this committee know, even though it's more of a finance issue, you're not here for the finance usually, but you could be, actually. You're right, not far away. So, so just letting this committee know that, as far as VAC goes, before, if you may remember, they had such a large surplus that we adjusted the levy to spend some of that down. Now it got to the point where we needed to start upping the levy because they were going to have no surplus. And so the goal is that in a couple of years, they're going to start adding to that surplus again. And not have their money come out of surplus to cover their spend. So, yep. Moving on. Under personnel HR issues, the only thing I had is I want to give the executive committee a chance to ask any questions. I had a couple of folks ask me about replacing the HR director with an administrator that would not only handle all of our HR, but assist all of our other department heads in some of their long-range strategic planning and implementing the policies that we put forth as the board through the administration department. So from that aspect, I want to make sure that the executive committee, we talked about it a couple times. We've talked about it last year at different times, but I want to make sure anybody had any questions, we can work through that now because she starts the 30th. So, I just want to make sure we're all on board with what that is. Tomorrow I'll be asking the finance committee to reduce my pay by $12,000 a year to help. That will make it a budget neutral situation, and where we gain is on the tort fund expenditures. So we'll actually be saving money overall. It may not seem like it, but the way that the allocations work, the general fund will be saving money by doing this. So, Mr. Snipes.
I understand what you're doing. And perhaps it's plausible, but if the county board chairman's salary is set already, how legally are we able to change something that's already been set unless you are donating it some kind of way or whatever.
Tomorrow, we set the compensation for the coroner, not for the coroner, but for all the elected officials. We do that tomorrow as a matter of business. That's the day we have to do it, and it goes to the full board for approval. So the treasurer, the sheriff, what am I missing? Oh, the clerk, county clerk. Yeah, coroner is not up this time. But it's those three we set along with chairman and county board member compensations. Liquor commissioner. So that's all done tomorrow. And then that takes effect 12/1.
Okay, after the full board
Right. Yep.
approves it.
Yep. We have to do that every 2 years. So, all right, just moving on then. Let me turn this off. Administrative, let's see, appointments. These are reappointments and a motion to, thank you so much, Mr. Seroy. Waive the reading, is that appropriate? Motion to waive the reading and accept those, I had a motion, a second, Mr. Olthoff. I guess we'll go all those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Announcing the openings. Opening on the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission. One opening, Board of Examiners and Appeals for a commercial contractor. Manteno Drainage District number 3, Manteno number 9, Will Kankakee Regional Development Authority, 2 openings on the Essex Township Fire Protection District, 2 openings on the Kankakee County Board of Health, and those are both doctor positions. So I've received one application for reappointment, so there'll be really one more after that. So that's all I had. Any other business? Mr. Snipes?
I'm sure we probably have all done it, but I think it's like a class 3 misdemeanor for those that may have not. All elected officials have to have that open meetings training. I don't know if we've all done it, and then it has to be filed like our statement of economic interest. So just an FYI, that training, even you can do it on your own computer, and there's a certificate that's issued after the training. And then that training, that certificate, or a copy of that certificate has to be filed with the county, so that we don't be in violation of that. And I think it's a class 3 misdemeanor. No, I was at the meeting, and when I sat up there, it has a thing that everybody, all elected officials have to do it, and most of us were looking. I went on and did it, and mine is filed. They say, where do we file it? I say, file it with the economic interest statement, but it got to be filed because there's a state law that says we have to do it. So all elected officials have to take that open meetings violation training, and it's supposed to be on file. I think we're supposed to do within your first year, or as soon as you come into the knowledge that that's supposed to be done. But at that training, it is something that's mandated and something that we do have to do for your information.
Was that mentioned that it has to be done once, or does it have to be done when you do every time there's a re-election?
No, it basically stated that if you do it once, that covers your term. Now, if you are split term and you're off and back on, then I'm thinking that you probably have to do it. But it'd be an interesting question to have the state's attorney, somebody look at. But
no, it's legit.
Yeah.
If the whole board's up for re-election, as it is in 2 years from now, basically, does the whole board have to take the training again? It's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works, and it's good training regardless.
It's
All right.
mandated.
Any other old business information? Any new business? Motion to adjourn, Mr. Legess, second. Mr. Snipes, all those in favor? Those opposed? Please don't forget to sign.
All elected
Thank you.
officials.